it's one thing to have pride nights. It's one thing to throw up rainbow flags and show that support. I think that is really important because you do want to feel welcome. You do want to feel like you are accepted. But actions speak louder than words. And when you have players who, will slip up and make, homophobic comments or whatever, you have to, number one, use it as an educational experience and make sure that they're learning why this is wrong. But you also have to follow that up with proper discipline. And sometimes that has kind of lacked in that aspect. I'm not saying you got to throw the book at people, but it has to go hand in hand as well. And I think that sends a strong message as well. My name is Kevin Jesus. I am 37 years old, and I am proudly gay and married and all that. Huge Oilers fan, huge sports fan. I've worked in sports media for a number of years. I still work in media and just like being involved and trying to make sure that everyone has, rights, equality, and everyone can just feel free to be themselves.
I love that. And I'm so sorry you're an Oilers fan.
5 Stanley Cups, so
In your lifetime?
Actually, in my lifetime. Actually, I was 6 months old when they won their first cup. So yes, in my lifetime, 5 Stanley Cups.
Well, that's good to hear. I'm happy for you. How did Kevin get into hockey?
You know what? It's funny. So I'm Portuguese. Soccer is our lifeline. My dad played pro soccer in Portugal. So that was always the big thing growing up. But of course, growing up in Edmonton, you're always going to be an Oilers fan. It was pretty easy. I actually can't really skate, so playing hockey isn't a huge thing, but spent many a time in the summer playing street hockey with the neighbors and obviously watching hockey, collecting hockey cards. That was kind of my first big foray into it. One of my earliest memories, quite frankly, was getting a Patrick Roy hockey card when he was with the Montreal Canadiens, and just like that, I was cheering for the Habs against the LA Kings in the 1993 final. So yeah, just always been a big hockey fan. Enjoy watching the game, and then when I progressed into sports media, just being able to follow some of these players as they progress through their careers. The one that immediately comes to mind is Braden Holtby, seeing him play in midget hockey, then going to midget AAA and going into junior hockey in Saskatoon and then into the NHL. Like, I felt so proud to see how far he's come. And quite frankly, I feel even prouder seeing how much of an advocate he's been for the LGBTQ community down south.
It's interesting that you cheered against Gretzky in '93. That seems sacrilegious in Edmonton, but
well, he was with the LA Kings, so maybe I kind of felt it was okay.
What do you love about hockey?
You know what? I love from the sport perspective, I love the speed. I love the action. It's just so much fun that way. But I love how it brings community together. I love how it is an opportunity where you can gather with your friends, with your loved ones, have some fun, debate when it's, you're a friend who happens to be a Leafs fan or something like that. But it's just, sport is sport. I love it.
Based off your intersection of identities, how could hockey be better for you? And also, how could it be better for the queer community as a whole?
I think it's one thing to have pride nights. It's one thing to throw up rainbow flags and show that support. I think that is really important because you do want to feel welcome. You do want to feel like you are accepted. But actions speak louder than words. And when you have players who, will slip up and make homophobic comments or whatever, you have to, number one, use it as an educational experience and make sure that they're learning why this is wrong. But you also have to follow that up with proper discipline, and sometimes that has kind of lacked in that aspect. I'm not saying you got to throw the book at people, but it has to go hand in hand as well. And I think that sends a strong message as well. So education and discipline both have to go together, and I think once you start seeing that makes a big difference. And then quite honestly, you really need to just go out of your way to show that it's going to be an inclusive place for a player to come in and be ready to go. And a lot of that starts in the locker room with language. And that's not just at the NHL level. That needs to start at levels far below that. And when you start seeing changes like that, then you'll start seeing players get drafted into the NHL. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm gay. And it's not a huge deal, if you will, and that's what's missing. That's what's needed, and I think that language will come, but we just need to keep working at that, and I think that's what's important.
Knowing that the language part is missing and that education is missing, what keeps you in the sport?
I mean, what keeps me in the sport is just I love it. I mean, it's just I love everything with it. I mean, I'm privileged in the sense that, you know, I'm a white guy, and I hate using this term, but like I pass off as straight. You know, like I have so many people like, oh, you don't look gay, and I get what they're trying to say, but yeah, that's a whole other conversation. But so I don't really get a lot of the negative experiences in the sport, and quite frankly, I don't play, so I'm not in the locker room. You know, I don't see that, but I've been around enough to know what's going on, and um, like I said, I love the sport. I love, you know, a lot of the players. You know, I love the games, but there is work to be done. And, you know, I appreciate the fact that there have been, you know, efforts to really be inclusive and welcoming, but we need to keep going. We need to keep going farther. And you know, it's funny because, you know, everyone during Pride Month, everyone is so excited and yay, you know, Pride rights and all that stuff. But then come July 1st, you know, the rainbow colors start going away. Look, it's 365, you know, and people need to remember that. So we just need to keep that work up, and it'll be, you know, that's how you're going to make that change.
What gives you hope for queer people in the sport moving forward?
What gives me hope is just a few things. Number one, society in general is moving in a positive way. And, you know, people are recognizing that, you know, all rights are, you know, human rights are rights, and we need to be accepting and welcoming and inclusive. So, you know, we're getting to that point where, especially, I mean, case in point, it took me until I was about 27-ish to come out to my family. Whereas now you're seeing people coming out when they're in like junior high school. And it's fantastic. They have so much courage now, these young kids. And so that gives me a lot of hope that there's a lot of change already beginning. It also gives me hope, like people like you who are working so hard to, you know, get that message across and to spread the message of language and education and just how important that is. And quite frankly too, seeing the allies out there too who are stepping up and being vocal and visible. All of that together gives me great hope that we're heading in the right direction.
I love that. And I'm going to tell you, you give me hope. And I'll tell you why. You spend a lot of time and have spent an enormous amount of time working in sport culture. You're around people in sport culture. Every time you step into those settings and engage with those people, they're critically thinking about what they say. Or if
Mhm.
they do say something that's homophobic, they're going to freeze up and go, "Oh shit."
Yep.
You're actively, without just your existence and unapologetically being yourself, is creating steps to shift culture. So I want to thank you for that because it really matters.
No, thank you for that because, you know, it took a while to be comfortable. You know, when I was in sports media, you know, on a regular basis, I was very guarded with where I went in public, what I was doing. You know, I'll share a really quick fun story. One of the first times that I you know, when I was in Saskatoon, I wanted to go out to the gay bar. And for the longest time, I really didn't want to when I was in Saskatoon because I was always scared, well, what if someone sees and how's that going to affect, you know, my relationships with the football players, the hockey players, and so forth. And then finally, a buddy of mine was just like, you know what, it's New Year's Eve. We're going to go. We're just going to have fun. And so we went, and oddly enough, a block away from the bar, there was the billboard of myself and my 6 o'clock team on there. So I'm seeing my face there and I'm like, oh, great. Well, if I wanted to not be recognized, like it's right there. And sure enough, as soon as I walked into that bar, within 5 minutes, there was a guy that came up to me and was just like, hey, aren't you the sports guy? And like my heart, I could just feel it start pounding. And then I kind of stopped and I'm like, yeah, I am. Like, who cares? And it wasn't a big deal. And that's when I personally started to see my confidence change. And that's when it was like, it's okay. So it, you know, it took me a while, and but like I said, I'm so thrilled to see so many people figuring themselves out at a much younger age.
There's something to that, and I've always been a big believer that as queer people, when we learn to accept ourselves, because I believe, and I will like go to my grave believing this, that only we can accept ourselves. Acceptance from others creates hierarchies that they're above us. We don't need it. We just need to accept who we are.
1000%.
And when we accept ourselves and then learn to love ourselves, we live the way you lived that night. We live free, we live happy, we live joyous, and we live unapologetically. And that's when we will see shifts.
Yep.
And that's when we will live with joy and happiness within ourselves.
1000%.
Kevin, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, you know what? It's like I said, I think it's important that people recognize that things, there's a lot of work to be done. Just because same-sex marriage is legal doesn't mean our quest for rights is over. There's so many issues around that need to get worked on. We still need to work on trans rights. We still need to work on people of color, the indigenous community. Like the list goes on and on. But it all starts, and we all can make a difference one step at a time. And I will also say again, I am a firm believer of being visible, being vocal. I also think teams need to continue to be visible and vocal and do it for the right reasons. I make no bones about it. I love the Edmonton Oilers. I grew up a big Oilers fan. I'm still very proud to say that my husband and we were the very first wedding at Rogers Place. And the Oilers were so supportive and they were so excited. And to this day, some of their staff members still talk about how awesome it was that there was a wedding, not just a gay wedding, a wedding at Rogers Place. And they were so fantastic to deal with. And that to me also showed a lot of growth within the league, just even seeing that. I know a buddy of mine had a similar experience with the Pittsburgh Penguins. So it's good to see those things happening. It's good to see that acceptance. It's good to see that inclusivity and that welcoming experience. And like you said, there's still some work to be done, but we'll get there. We absolutely will.
Awesome. Kevin, thank you so much.
It's absolutely my pleasure, Brock. Thank you for doing this, because I think this series is going to change lives.